Welcome to today's episode of Tech Hour. My name is Krill, and today's topic is landing pages and website event tracking. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about what a landing page is, how to build one, the required components that are necessary in order to connect the otherwise disconnected landing page or web form to Creatio installation, and then how that can help us with the website tracking. So let's take a look at what we're going to be building today. The first thing we're going to go is we're going to create a website. We're going to put a form there, and we're going to ask people to submit this form. So things like the first name, last name, email, maybe some other content if we find that important. So we're going to create a form to do so. Now, this form is important because it's going to give us an identifier that will help us identify the person. And I apologize if you can hear some noise in the background. But this form will identify who the person is, and then we will take this identifier and marry it with the events that are occurring in our website, so we can always tell who the person is. So once we do that, once we accomplish all those things, then hopefully we'll be able to see a newly created contact and whatever he or she was doing in our website. So let's take a look how and what's required of us when we're configuring it. So we're going to be putting some JavaScript content into this website, and that will provide all the necessary details. But in essence, it's very easy. We're just creating a JavaScript function that will submit something. It will submit the information that you see on your screen right now onto a microservice that is connected to Creatio. Now, all the complexity is kind of abstracted away for you, so you don't need to worry about it. All you need to know is that you have a form, it's got a CSS selector, and we use that CSS selector to map the fields that we want to submit to what we collect in the form. Once we have this object to send, we will wire it up so that the button will actually submit it once we press the button. And then everything should just work automatically, kind of like a magic, and we don't need to worry about it. So let's take a look in more details what our objectives for today. First, we're going to create a landing page inside of Creatio so we can post into it, or we can submit the data into it. Then we're going to create our page, and we're going to create it. We're going to map the fields, the JavaScript file fields or HTML fields, to what's in Creatio. And then we're going to create a tracking based on this kind of association between the cookie that we're going to get and whatever the person activity is. Okay. That's it for the slides for today. Let's quickly jump into our demo. And what I have for us is a pre-configured Creatio application. Now, the reason I pre-configured that is I wanted to make sure that everything works and everything is tested, since we're integrating a couple of components here, but we're going to talk through every single step here. This is just a Creatio app. I've gotten it in the cloud not too long ago, maybe a day before. Maybe yesterday, yes, I believe yesterday. And one of the requirements in order for us to create a tracking is to make sure that you connect with or you contact Creatio support and you request them to enable this feature. It can be done in any email, in any form. Just write an email saying, I am such and such, and could you please activate in such and such domain this feature? And the feature is event site web tracking. Now, the reason it's done this way so that when you're getting an online demo that we don't get the abuse of this service, and so it has to be activated. Now, when you're in production, obviously, you can do it yourself, or you will be provided with all the API keys that you need to know in order to make it work. But when you're in trial or when you're in a demo, then you need to connect with our support, and they will configure everything for you. We're going to jump into creating a landing page first, and once the landing page is created, we're going to talk about creating tracking. So let's take a look what it's supposed to look like. Now, I have a little website that I built for myself here just for the purpose of this demonstration, and this website lives on my local host. I'll provide all the links for this website, but it's just a made up pictures and made up things, and all it does, it just simply shows that you've got some pages here, and it kind of mimics a normal website with your perhaps products, etc. But what we're interested in primarily is this contact page section. So the contact page section, typically you would build it in HTML and you would create a form and you would put a couple of input areas here, text area or input fields, whatever the case might be, and you'll collect some information from a user. Once the user submits this inquiry or hits this button, something needs to happen to this form. A lot of times this form will be posted into your backend database for further processing, but in our case what we want to do is we want to leverage Creatio. So we're going to take whatever's here on this simple form and we're just going to send it to Creatio. Once it's inside the Creatio, we'll ask it to create a contact for us and remember all the information that was provided to us here. Now, I made it super simple, just for sake of demonstration here, but you can extend this form and you can ask for additional fields. You're by no means limited to just a contact name and an email subject and your message. You can also ask for things such as telephone number, addresses, job titles, and any other field that you can think of, you can ask on this form. You can obviously add some validations and things like that, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. So once the person submits this form, the expectation is that somehow it will end up here in Creatio. Where is it going to end up? Well, we expect it to end up in the lead because we're going to be creating a lead or web to lead form. Now, in order for this to happen, we first need to go to landing pages and we need to tell Creatio that there is a landing page out there on the internet. And that landing page will be sending you information. So when you receive such information, please go ahead and do something with that. So let's create a new landing page. And I've already pre-created this, so let's open an existing one. When you create it, let me show you beforehand. When you create it, all you have to do is click on the new, and you've got some forms to choose from. You can create cases, that's for service. You can create orders for sales, right? You can create leads or event participants, or you can even create your own objects. That doesn't matter. You can still do that. So if you have your own object, let's say object of your own design, let's say training or maybe something else, you can post into those objects as well. Now, if that's of any interest to you, please do let us know and we'll create kind of a separate episode for that because it does take a bit of a tinkering with the system to make it work. So it's not enabled by default, but you can easily enable it. Okay, so what I did here is I said, let's go and create a lead registration form. So I expect that my landing page in here, and we'll take a look at what generates this page. So whatever the information from here is going to be going straight into Creatio, and inside the Creatio, we are creating a lead. So let's open it up. There are a couple of things here that we need to make sure we get right. First, obviously, we need to provide a name, and there is an asterisk to it, so without a name, you wouldn't be able to save it. Now, there is this thing called website domains. So when you're creating a landing page, you absolutely have to know where your landing page is going to live. In my particular case, it's going to live here, and as you can see, you can use wildcards. You don't have to go all the way out and create the domain. You can use wildcards, and so I'm using star because I don't remember which port I live on. So it's going to essentially allow anything from, as long as the URL has this in it, then it will be fine. And this happens to be my host name or name of my computer. Now, the description here is just to help you identify what this landing page is. Normally, you would say probably where it's coming from. Maybe if you're creating a landing page for a particular channel, that's probably what you're going to say here. But again, that's just an alphanumeric field. You can type whatever you want. This is just a description. Obviously, status is important if it's inactive. So if it's not marked as active, but rather inactive, then you wouldn't be able to respond to it, right? So make sure that it's marked as active. Now, once you did all this stuff, let's talk about this checkbox, create contact. By default, this checkbox may be off. And if that's the case, then no contact will be created. So when we create a lead, right, you're only going to create a lead, but there's going to be no contact created for it. Now, in my particular application, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to create a new contact as well as the lead. I just think it's a nicer workflow, but you can change it to fit your needs. So now that we've configured, or now that we understand what this is, let's talk about these steps. So first, it's telling me, what is this redirect URL? It's optional, which is great. And you can read more about it by hovering over this I button. And essentially what it does is when you click on this send inquiry button, okay, it's going to redirect us somewhere. So once the button is pressed, where is it going to redirect us? And it's going to redirect us to this index page. Okay, so we have an index.php page, and when the button is submitted and everything went well, we're just going to get redirected to this location. Now it's giving us some scary stuff here, something that we need to do, and we'll talk about it in more detail. But as you could see, everything that we've done here is kind of pre-configured for us. I apologize for all this noise here today. So we just need to know where to post it, or where to add it on our website so everything works, and then we need to do something with this little thing. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But for now, let's just take a look at a quick demonstration of what the final and working product may look like. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go quickly take a walk to my leads. And as you could see, I shouldn't have any leads right now, so it's completely empty. And also my contacts. So I only have myself and a couple of system contacts or demo contacts. So Andrew Baker, myself, and then a couple of other ones, and nothing else. So let's go into our application here, and let's refresh this page just to make sure that we're starting from, we're starting fresh. And so we're sitting here in the contact.php. So we're sitting on the contact page. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, well, I'm going to have to come up with my own name here. So I'm going to say John Smith, and my email is going to be john.smith, let's say at, and I've used this clearly, creatio.com. Now, a subject. In this particular case, we're doing this lead form, so perhaps we're inquiring about something, and I'm not really sure what you're going to be inquiring, so I can't put that in the context, but maybe someone's asking for something, or maybe this is your feedback form, whatever the case might be. So he or she may, or in this case, John Smith, might be providing a subject. And so let's say, need more info, and I liked your product. Please reach out with more info. Thanks. Let's send this inquiry. So what we're doing now is, as soon as we're clicking on send, this website needs to connect to our Creatio, and let's try sending it actually. And what happened? Did we not? Let's bring up a console. Hopefully we didn't get any errors here. Now, there we go. So everything went well. Just took a while because I refreshed the sites and I just started up, and you could see that we got redirected to index.php. Okay, so we've submitted our form and we got redirected back to our front page. So we got redirected to the first one, and then we can continue browsing. We've already submitted, and this is just a website. So it doesn't remember anything. There is no login page. There is nothing here. So it's not like you can, like it's a full e-commerce or something site. So that's it. That's all the features that we got here. Let's go back into Creatio, and let's click on the contact, and let's see if John Smith is created for us. And we can see that John Smith is here. Let's go and take a look at the leads as well. And what we'll see is that, well, I happen to create two John Smith because I've clicked on it twice. Let's now go inside this John Smith lead, for example, and let's take a look what kind of information came here. Well, I see, first of all, it's my contact name, and the contact was created for me. Second, I see is that I have the email. Okay, so that's great. That came straight from this landing page from the email field. And then if I go into customer need detail, so here's my need more info. Okay, and I also mapped the body, okay, so your message, to go into here. So now your lead is normalized, and all the information is in the right boxes, so you could run business process, you can run DCM, whatever it is that you want to run here. You can totally do that. So we've gotten the information in the right boxes. And as a bonus, because I already have website tracking configured, let's take a look at what's happening to John Smith when we click on it. And we're going to go into website tracking, or website event tracking. And originally it says nothing, but then here's my data. So all the information that John Smith was browsing is available to me right here. So I can see that he went to contact, products, homepage, contact again, product, contact, homepage. So there's been some going around here, and we'll talk about how this information is stored and what's here, what is here. So I'll see that here's the page, some details about the browser, the languages that are enabled for the browser, or the current language, the pixels, and things like this. So there's quite a lot of information here. Okay, so now that we understand that how we can configure landing pages here, okay, so let's take a look again at landing page. Now let's see where and how we insert that scary JavaScript code onto our website. So if we go online on the website and we inspect the page, you'll see that this JavaScript file is already included. And what I will give you is I'll give you this. Okay, so this is the file that essentially this is the entire demo, and inside this file I have already added all those scripts. So we're going to take a look at the contact PHP. I have the content form, I got basically my sections broken down here. So here's my main content, something to do with the background, and my map. So if we are going to go down, there's like I believe a Google map here for us, and I put our address here. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that my content, okay, so my form here, and if we go deep enough, okay, so here's going to be my form, there it is, and inside this form there's going to be a couple of fields here, margins, here's my input, so yada yada yada, that's going to be for the subject, that's going to be, I believe, for a name, and this is going to be for my email, okay, and that's just the placeholders, like just the regular input for text fields. And somewhere here we're also going to have a button on submit, and on submit button, just like in any other form, usually you provide some sort of a JavaScript that needs to run. In this particular case, here is the JavaScript that I need to provide, and this piece of code is given to me by Creatio. So if we're going to go here and you'll take a look at this line, you'll see that on submit equals something something return false. I can just simply add that to my on submit action, okay, and there it is. That's all I had to do. Okay, so this step is very, very easy. So we're just simply saying that, hey, button, whenever you press, go and do this stuff. Okay, that's all we're saying here. Okay, now the next thing that we're what happened to my 1 second. The next thing that we're saying here is that we would like to now include some JavaScript files to explain the browser what this create object is and how we should be creating it, okay? So where and how do we do this? Well, we need to take all this script and we need to place it also on our page. Now, it just so happens that in my particular application here, in the contact PHP in this page, I am also including something from a header. Okay, so I have a header information, and essentially this header information is all about, like this black bar and these logos and these fellas, that's all header information. So I'm including all those necessary JavaScript files inside the header, so I don't have to include it on every page. So if we're going to take a look at the header, I've included 2 components here. So if you're interested in downloading this website, you'll see inside the header is that there is a website tracking JavaScript, and there is something for landing page, and not lending, but landing page. Inside the script tag, Okay, here's what we've copied, and this is essentially what was provided to me by Creatio. So when you create this page, okay, this stuff will be generated for you automatically. There's no need for you to worry about what this stuff is and what this stuff is, or generating these IDs. Okay, that's completely abstracted away for you. But we're going to talk about what they are. You just simply take it, you put it inside a script tag, and you're done. And these things as well. Okay, so you just have to make sure that you essentially copy everything that there is on the page that you're told to copy. Just copy, paste it into your page, and you're done. Now, redirect URL. Remember, we specified that we need to redirect from here. Well, this is exactly where the value is going to end up. It's going to end up as a property of a redirect URL property, right? So it's going to be a value of a redirect URL property of this config object. Now, service URL is where we're going to be posting this, or where we're going to be posting into. So you can see it's a URL of my Creatio instance, and then it goes 0 service model, and then a long string of things. And then there is this lending ID. Now, lending ID we use to make sure that, you can't just spam essentially into Creatio. And when you create this lending page, the ID of the record that you're creating is right here. So this is think of it as kind of a filter, okay? So this particular lending ID, now you can have multiple pages that will reuse this lending ID. If, let's say, you're posting in a professional designation website, let's say, and then you're publishing it on GitHub, you can collect it all through the same landing pages, and they can all be the same ID, or they can be different. So it's completely up to you. Okay, so that's essentially what these fields are. Now, custom fields allow you to create your own custom fields, and perhaps for now we'll leave it, beyond the scope of this tutorial. But let's talk about this stuff. It says that we want to create mapping, or CSS selector mapping, between the field and the CSS item. If we look on the contact page, on the contact HTML or PHP, you'll see that I have an ID here somewhere. There we go. So here's my ID. That's going to be my CSS selector. And so here it says name form. Okay. How do I address a CSS? Well, with the hash sign. And here's my name form. Now, if I were to go and look for an email, which is a next field, okay, so here's it's a type, and here's my ID, it's an email form. And so inside my CSS selector, it's an email form, and so forth, and so forth. So these are the fields on my page, and we don't know what they're going to be called. They can be called anything you want. It could be any gibberish or any combination of characters to identify the CSS selector. On the left-hand side, though, like on here, these are the fields from Creatio objects. So if we're going to go back into our Creatio application, let's just open the back end here, okay? And I'm going to use a shortcut. And let's take a look at the lead entity, okay? Let's wait for it to load up. All right, and we're going to be looking for a lead, and I've been here already, so I looked at it, but you can just type in lead, and let's take a look at from web lead form. That looks like a reasonable place to look. And on the left-hand side, you will be able to expand all the columns of your entity, and that will tell you what the field names are. So you can take a look at the columns, or you can take a look at the inherited columns, and in here you'll see items such as account and name and comments and things like this. So one such field that I wanted to connect to was notes. So I'm going to take this value, notes, and I'm going to go into my landing page, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to connect notes to this CSS selector. Now, there is this weird field called commentary. So let's go and see if we can find this commentary. And indeed, we can find commentary okay? But on the UI in Creatio, it's going to be called notes. So when you go into here and you go into your leads, and you're going into a newly created lead here, for example, you'll see that it's this commentary, okay, is going to be called notes. And so my notes is where the value is going to appear. So that's how you can do your mapping, and so forth and so on. The email maps to an email, and name maps to name. And here's example, a bunch of other fields that you may want to consider mapping if you're creating a lead form. And you can just basically elaborate from here on. Now, if you want to create something a little bit more elaborate, for example, you could say that inside a lead, maybe you have a particular value for an account, and then there is a city. You can even use dot notation. So, for example, let's say we have a company, and then company.city. You can do something like this, if that's what you want to do. In my simple example, I am not going to use it. All right, now that we've created the lead, let's talk a little bit about the automatically filled values. So when we go back to landing page one more time, what you will see is that we have an option of creating this automatically or default values here. Oh, by the way, just a word of caution. Make sure that if you're creating a contact, if you want to create a contact when you're creating a lead, make sure that you have an email. If there's no email, then there will be no contact. It's a requirement. I haven't tested that in the latest version, but that was true as a couple of versions ago. And the reason for it is for a duplicate search. So if you want to create a contact from this web form, just make sure that you're providing an email. And if you're not providing, the performance may not be what you expect it to be. Okay, let's go and take a look at the default values now. A default values is something that allows us to create a lead and populate kind of a static values here. So here I'm going to say that my channel is a direct traffic because that's going to be coming from my website, right? So I've created my website and then people just somehow discover it through whatever, and so I call it direct traffic. I'm also calling it category D. I can call it anything I want if I have marketing segmentation and a customer need. I expect it to be need for our service. Why? Well, because my website only advertises services, nothing else, and so I'm saying need for my service. Now I can completely skip it and remove it, but I think that kind of demonstrates that you can create some default values. A lot of times you will be creating landing pages and placing them in strategic locations on the internet. For example, one could be on Facebook, one could be on maybe a professional society website. So let's say I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, and if let's say I want to advertise on a CPA magazine, then obviously I'm going to be using a slightly different category than perhaps if I'm creating this landing page on a Facebook. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so, and that's all there is to it. Now, there is one thing to remember, and right now I want to get a little bit more technical with you. So let's bring up our console. Let's press F12 here, and let's take a look what happens with the network when we submit this value. So I'm going to create here. I'm going to create this person, and we're going to say test subject and test message. Okay, and what we're going to be observing now is what's going over the network. That's why we brought up the console here. Now, the other interesting thing is if we go inside of an application before we actually do this, let's make sure that we have an application here. So let's go into app, and inside the application, I want to talk about these tracking cookies. And the reason these tracking cookies exist is because, well, somehow we need to track your activity throughout our website. So this tracking cookie, let's clear it. Let's remove them all, okay? And let's refresh our website. So now we have no cookies on the website. And the first time that we're going to come to this website, you'll see that this CR tracking cookie is being issued to us, and it's got some values. Now, as we go on a network, you'll see that there is something called receive, and we're doing some tracking, okay? And as I'm going let's say from page to page. Let me go to product. Okay, and you'll see that there is going to be a receive, another receive. And so every time that we navigate from page to page, a request is going to be sent to Creatio.com so we can track what you're doing. The cookie value itself doesn't really track what you're doing. It's not like a shopping cart that you fill and you put everything in the cookie and then you submit. No, we immediately submit it to this tracking service. This tracking service then somehow needs to associate that, okay, well, someone with this cookie actually is a person. So he or she has a name and an email and things like that. And the only time that we can actually associate that is when you do this landing page and when you submit. So let me go and do this one more time. So I'm going to say test subject and test message. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send an inquiry one more time. Now let's take a look what's happening here. Now you see that we have the save web form data, okay, and it's doing a post request, and it's doing a post request to our URL. Now this URL needs to have course enabled, but you don't need to worry about it. Essentially, it just works for us, okay? We just submit this form and it works. So what happens here is now we've submitted the information not only about not only on the form, but we also included that cookie, and so that that service can now marry the cookie and the history associated with that cookie to this particular person who is now known as Judy. So let's go into contacts. And let's verify that. Okay, and so here's my person who I just created. And if I open it, and if I go into website tracking, and pay attention to what's going to be loaded on the page right away. See, nothing is here. There are no website events. And that's because these events aren't necessarily tracked, okay? They're not necessarily tracked as part of in the Creatio. This is a dynamic lookup. Now, because we've created and we played around with these cookies and we didn't quite get the new one, so it is possible that there's going to be no tracking associated. Okay, so that's perfectly feasible. So just bear in mind that if you're opening the page from the same application here, okay, and you're playing with the cookies, you may or may not see it in your test environment. Now, when it's happening out in the wild, chances are it's going to work just fine. The other thing to keep in mind is that if people have those privacy things, that they run as a part of the browser extension, that if they clear cookies every time they close a site, which many do, then that information is going to be gone for good, and we will never be able to match the contact that submits it to a tracking cookie. So if they use some of those devices or some of those extensions, that we will never be able to match that information. If, on the other hand, we pretend that we're coming from a new device here, so here I'm opening my incognito browser, and here I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to go to about, and I'm going to go to my gallery, I'm going to go back to my contact. So I'm going to, let's say, browse my website, and I'm going to bring up my console here just one more time. Come on, console, open up. All right, there it is. And if we're going to take a look at what's inside my application, you'll see that there's a totally different tracking cookie with a bunch of other things here. And so I can go and submit private, and then I'm going to say private at, let's say, creatio.com, private, and I'm just faking, obviously, this information. So we submit this stuff. It posts to this tracking, it redirects us back. And so what I can expect now is if I come here to a list of contacts and I refresh this list of contacts, I expect to see this private person. And let's see if I have some website events for this private person. And there they are, okay? So when you're not playing around with cookies, when you're not deleting them, then everything is gonna work fine. But if you have some of those extensions that kind of get in the way, then unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay. Now let's talk about where and how we can add this script to our page. And in exactly the same place as I've added this script to add landing page, okay, so I can submit my landing page, we need to add this stuff, this mysterious stuff, and where do we get this from, and how do we get all this stuff? All right. We're not going to go through what this stuff does, okay? We really don't care. But what we can see here is that there's going to be a post, okay, into some sort of a source that has nothing to do with our application, and that's essentially where we're posting the information, okay? You can create, you can download some of this JavaScript file to make this website a little bit faster, but for the purpose of my demonstration, I didn't bother with this. So let's take a look how we can configure website tracking now. Now everything starts off by going into your System Designer. So let's go to System Designer, and in here, you've got website event tracking and you've got event tracking service setting. Now first we need to go into the service setting. A service setting will confirm whether or not we have this service connected. You have to make sure that it's green, and you cannot unfortunately make it green on your own. This is when you need to contact support. So you just write them an email and say, hey, I'm configuring it, please activate that feature, and they will do it within a reasonable amount of time. Definitely something that normally gets done within maybe 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how many active cases they're working on, but definitely within a day it should be done. Okay, once you see that this this thing is green, this checkbox is green or dot is green, you can go and create a new project. Now, everything is laid out on the Academy website. It's explaining how to follow step by step, but essentially what you need to do is you need to provide a name, you need to provide a description, just like on the landing page. Okay, you can specify who's the owner of this particular project, and the reason we have project is because for website tracking, you can have multiple websites. Think, for example, when you have multiple e-commerce domains. Okay, so I have, let's say, an e-commerce I don't know, for one brand and another brand, but I really want to track it as part of one tracking project, so I can easily keep it all kind of inside of one project, or you can separate it, so it's really up to you. Okay, so now that you've got this project, what you can do is you can create a tracking resource. Creating a tracking resource is very easy. Just hit on the plus, and the screen will appear. Once the screen appears, again, just give it some name, give it the ID or the URL of the website where you expect the tracking to happen. In my case, I track everything on this website, so I'm not providing any additional information here. I make sure it's active and the date modified. That's just going to create it whenever you've created this thing. Okay, so in my case, it was created on the 17th and 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, good. Now, you're going to get this stuff, okay? And this is the stuff that you just simply copy to clipboard. You go into your web browser or you go into your page and just simply paste it here. Okay, that's it. That's all you have to do to get your basic website tracking. If there is nothing else you want to do, then that should be enough. You close it, go back into your web page, refresh it, make sure that this is included in your application, and let's go and take a look at that. So if we're going to go to, I think I'm here, and let's wait for the browser to load up, and let's open the source code and straight in the browser. Okay, and what we're looking for is we're looking for this. Here's our landing page, and somewhere we should see that function for there. So here's our function loaded on the index page, okay, with how stuff will be submitted. I didn't need to do anything here. I don't need to reconfigure it. I don't need to touch it. Just copy, paste in the right place, and you're done. And now your website is tracking those events. Now, there are more sophisticated features, and let me jump into them just for a quick second. We're not going to configure them because it's very website specific, but what you can do is you can create tracking events and tracking code. So for example, if someone clicks on something, or someone sends you a form, or someone fills something out, or changes focus from one place to another, you can configure to track those specific events. I'll give you an example. Imagine on your website you have some sort of a white page, a document, or some sort of a book or booklet that people would like to download. And as they click on that link, you would like to know that they actually looked. So they went deeper into your documentation, perhaps at the level of engagement. You can kind of gauge the level of engagement based on what they're doing. So if that's what you want to do, then perhaps on the click on the particular hyperlink, you can wire it up so that you will be notified, or you will get that specific event when the person goes out there and just clicks on something. So if you want to configure it, the instructions are all online, but essentially you need to add this little thing, okay, to your hyperlink. What happens on click there? Now, there are many events that you can subscribe. So let's say somebody goes in the search, and you can see it's all automatically generated. So it's very easy for a webmaster to just take this thing, and they will know exactly what to do with this, and just take this and drop it on their HTML page. And that's it. That's all there is about tracking. So the tracking relies on a landing page to associate tracking ID with a particular contact or a particular lead, and well, contact in our case. And when this join happens, when this marriage happens, then you're going to see the results. If someone goes into your website, browses a lot of pages, submits buttons, clicks buttons, does all that stuff, but never submits a form and identifies him or herself, you will never know of it. And there are other tools that will allow you to create website tracking, for anonymous usage, that type of stuff, but it will never flow to a CRM system because, well, who are we going to assign it to? It's pointless information. If we don't know who you are, and you never end up in our database, then what's the point of having you there and tracking your events? So only if the person actually goes on the contact page and somehow submits it, and then you can marry the tracking cookie and the contact, only then will the information flow and end up in your contact. Okay, so this is essentially all I wanted to show you for how to create a website tracking and a landing page. So let's jump quickly into a slide and see if there's something else we have. And the next one is I wanted to invite you to a hackathon. So it's happening August 31st, so I believe next week. We're going to be looking at various tools, low code and not low code, just the real code, how to build certain applications, how to build connectors and add-ons and templates, and how to basically leverage Marketplace to publish our own solutions, and how to hopefully monetize them and make some money out of it. So please do join us on August 31st. We'll have lots of demos and interesting videos how to build things that perhaps you otherwise wouldn't see. All right, all the code, if you're interested for configuration of this website, of my PHP website, I will add that to description for this video, so you'll be able to go and download. I'll publish it on GitHub, and you'll be able to just clone that repo and run it. Everything runs in Docker, so you can just one-liner, and you've got your website up and running. All right, well, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and until the next time, bye-bye.